If you have yet to make chicken Parmesan at home because you're afraid it might not turn out right or it takes too much time, then this recipe is for you. I'm going to show you how easily you can make restaurant quality chicken Parmesan that can also be low carb and gluten-free. Almond and tapioca flour, Parmesan cheese, and Italian seasonings add amazing flavor to the crispy breading on the chicken. Then the chicken is quickly pan-seared to juicy perfection on your stovetop. It's crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Finally, mozzarella cheese is melted and lightly browned on top after only a few minutes in your oven. Then I'll show you how I serve it with my zoodles and favorite marinara sauce. You are going to be so proud of yourself for cooking such an impressive dish. We're going to start with 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and as you know, they are thinner on one end and then get thicker towards the other. Now what I don't care for with chicken Parmesan is when the really thin tip is really thickly breaded and then gets overcooked, waiting for the rest of the chicken to cook. So to make sure it's evenly cooked and juicy throughout, we want our piece of chicken to be an even thickness throughout. So we can easily do this by just pounding our chicken. And I have found it works best to just put it inside of a plastic bag, and then you could use a meat tenderizer or any other heavy object in your kitchen. I'm just using my rolling pin. And then we're going to simply whack our chicken until it's an even thickness. And I'm being careful not to spread it any thinner on the thin tip, but focus most of the energy onto the thicker part. Now our 2 pieces of chicken are an even thickness. Now we're going to prepare our 3-step process for breading our chicken. In our first container, we're going to simply add 1/4 cup of tapioca flour. And then in our next tray, we're just going to add 2 eggs. And then just using a fork, we'll whisk those together. And then our last tray is where all the flavor magic happens. And we're going to start with 2/3 of a cup of almond flour. And this is going to give it a really delicious kind of nutty texture in addition to making it low carb and gluten-free. But you could use the same amount of bread or panko crumbs instead. Next we want to add the Parmesan cheese, and I have found that freshly grated is best. Now you can buy Parmesan cheese that's pre-shredded, but it's been coated in cellulose to keep it from sticking together. So I prefer to grate my own to avoid any unnecessary ingredients. So I'm just going to add 2/3 of a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And for our seasonings, we'll add 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of paprika, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then we'll just mix this together in the bowl. Now after we coat our chicken, we'll want to put it onto a tray. And then I'm just taking a piece of parchment paper and folding it in half and laying it on the tray. And then I'm going to open it up and just set our tray at the end of our assembly line to place the chicken on after it's been coated. Now we'll simply take our chicken and dip it into the flour and very generously make sure it's all coated and shake off the excess. And then we're going to dip it into our egg mixture and make sure it gets well coated on both sides. Now we'll let the extra egg drip off, and then in it goes to our cheese and seasonings. And this is where we do not want to be stingy. We want to make sure it gets very generously coated with all those delicious flavors. And then we'll lay it onto our parchment paper. And then we can repeat with our remaining chicken breasts. This next step is optional but highly recommended by Gordon Ramsay, and that is to cover the chicken with the parchment paper and then just take a simple rolling pin and then just roll gently over the chicken. And this is going to really bind the coating to the chicken, making it even more flavorful. That looks awesome, and you can see that the coating has really adhered to the chicken. When it comes to marinara sauce, you could absolutely make your own or use store-bought. I have found that there are so many delicious organic store-bought options that are super convenient. And they don't include any additional sugars or unnecessary preservatives, which really brings down the carb count on the overall dish. So before I start cooking my chicken, I'll just dump my sauce into a small saucepan and then let it simmer on low heat on a back burner while I'm cooking my chicken. But you could also just microwave this in a bowl at the very end, right before you need it. I'm using my cast iron fry pan and I have my heat set to medium high. Now I'm just going to add a couple tablespoons of some light olive oil. And you can see how it's already starting to move around on our pan, which means that it's nice and hot. Now I'll carefully just tilt my pan, make sure it's well coated in the oil. And then we'll just take our breaded chicken breast and very carefully lay away into our pan. Ooh, we get that nice instant sizzle, which is what we want. Now we want to just let those sit for a couple minutes or until the bottom becomes a nice golden brown. So these have been cooking for a couple minutes. I'm going to add just some little pats of butter to the sides, which are going to make it even more flavorful. And I'll lift up the edge just to help get that butter underneath. I didn't want to put the butter on too early or else it might burn. So these have been cooking for about 3.5 minutes, so it's time to flip them over. Ooh, look at that golden brown color on the bottom. That is beautiful. It smells so incredible in here. Now I'll let these continue to cook for another couple minutes, and then I'll start checking the internal temperature. And we'll know it's done when it reaches an internal temperature of 165 degrees. So that reached 165 and 165. So we can go ahead and turn off our heat. This chicken is done. So I'm going to take my pan with the parchment paper and just fold it over, and then take out our pieces of chicken and just rest them right on top. Oh, those look so good. Now we can add our mozzarella cheese. And my favorite is this whole milk Italian style because it has that classic melt and stretch. I'm going to take my cheese slicer and cut several thin slices, but you could also use grated cheese and spread it on top of your chicken. First, I'm going to spread a couple of spoonfuls of marinara sauce on top, and I'm intentionally keeping it away from the sides of the chicken so they can stay crispy, because they will get plenty of sauce later when we serve it with our zoodles. Next, you can add the slices of cheese however you like. You can break the pieces if necessary to cover the shape of your chicken. Now our chicken is already cooked, but I'm going to put it into the oven on the broil setting on low just for a couple minutes to toast and melt the cheese. I broiled these on low in my oven for just a couple of minutes, and now we have that golden crust on top of our cheese. You can enjoy your chicken parmesan over any type of noodles that you like. My favorite is to create zoodles from zucchini. Not only are they low carb, but they also taste fresh and delicious. And my favorite way for cutting my noodles is using this electric spiralizer. All you do is cut off both ends of your zucchini, insert the slicer, snap in the lid, poke the tamper into the end of your zucchini, push your zucchini down into the slicer, flip the on switch and let it do all the work. And then you have instant zucchini pasta. Now because zucchini is so thin and soft, you barely have to cook it to make it al dente. And I have found that the quickest way is to simply put it into the microwave. So I'm just going to take some of these fun long zucchini noodles onto my plate. Go ahead and cut them off. And then I'll just discard the center that has all the seeds. And then I'll sprinkle on some salt and then put this in the microwave for 1 minute. So after 1 minute, these zucchini noodles are perfectly soft, and there is a little bit of excess moisture, so you can just take a paper towel and come in and just kind of blot out some of that extra moisture. And then give them just a little fluff with your fork. Now before I assemble my dish, I want to add some fresh basil. So I've just taken a few leaves here, and then I'm going to roll them up nice and tight and just make some very thin little cuts, and then cut them a couple times crosswise. Then I have these very fragrant little basil leaves. Well, now I have all my ingredients to assemble my chicken parmesan. Now because these chicken slices are pretty large, I'm going to go ahead and just cut this in half to make a single portion. Oh my goodness, that looks amazing. You can see how juicy and soft it is on the inside, and then it has that delicious crust on the outside. So I'll go ahead and place this over my zoodles and then spoon on some of my delicious marinara sauce. I prefer to add my sauce at the end so that the chicken hasn't been resting in the sauce, because that's just going to make the crust a little bit soggy and my noodles are not overly drenched. And I'll add a little more of my Parmesan cheese, yum, and a sprinkle of fresh basil. That is amazing. As soon as I bite in, I get all those delicious Italian flavors that all come together in this incredible bite. I get the crispiness from the outside of the chicken that is perfectly seasoned and has just the right amount of salt to it. And then I get those rich tomato flavors that come in through the marinara sauce. And then I get the soft, smooth texture of the mozzarella cheese. And then getting that little fresh hint of basil at the end just totally finishes it off. And the zoodles just give it that fresh, neutral flavor and have the texture of pasta. That is as delicious as any chicken parmesan that I've had in a restaurant, and I am so proud to have made it at home. And making it low carb by replacing the breadcrumbs with the almond flour and using a marinara sauce without any extra sugar, and replacing pasta noodles with zoodles makes for a very satisfying meal with a very manageable calorie count. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today to make this delicious chicken parmesan. And I've included a link in the video description below to the full recipe, which is on my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you know someone who you think would love to have a low-carb chicken Parmesan option, then please share this video with them. And I cannot wait to have you hang out with me again in my kitchen next time.